tonight. All He's done for us. So Brother Sparks, he can go ahead tonight. Since the way the service went this morning, he didn't get to preach, but he told me to go ahead and I'll do my best. I feel like the Lord laid this on my heart. But the book of Joshua, chapter 4. Yesterday to the overdose awareness thing they had, and really had to get out of my comfort zone. Not that I don't care to talk to people. I'm just not a real outgoing person. And so Sister Kathy and I got there, and David and Audrey were there, and they stayed with us a while, and then they left. And so it left us there, just the two of us, which James and his wife was there with us for a while, and others. Garfield was there beside us. But those that would come up and things we had there to offer to give away, and I thought they would come up and they would each tell us their sobriety. They were so proud of the time that they had been sober. And we were trying to encourage them. And there were some there that weren't in sobriety. And they were needing help. And there was some there to offer that help. But I really enjoyed my time there yesterday. And it helps us to realize how much there is to do for the kingdom of God. There's so much that needs to be done that if we're not careful, like I preached last week, we'll sit right here inside these four walls and we're not getting what needs to be done for God's glory. I appreciate the Lord for helping us. But the book of Joshua chapter 4, got this on my mind and I hope I can deliver it the way I think it. Sometimes you get a thought on your mind and then you try to deliver it and it just don't go like you're thinking. But, chapter 4, we'll start reading verse 1. It says, "And it came to pass, when all the people were clean passed over Jordan, that the Lord spake unto Joshua, saying, Take you 12 men out of the people, out of every tribe of man, and command ye them, saying, Take ye hence out of the midst of Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood firm, 12 stones, and ye shall carry them over with you, and leave them in the lodging place where ye shall lodge this night. And Joshua called the 12 men whom he had prepared of the children of Israel, of every tribe a man. And Joshua said unto them, Pass over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of Jordan, and take you up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, according unto the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask their fathers in time to come, saying, What mean ye these stones? Then ye shall answer them, that the waters of Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, when it passed over Jordan. The waters of Jordan were cut off, and the stones shall be for a memorial unto the children of Israel forever. And the children of Israel did so as Joshua commanded, and took up 12 stones out of the midst of Jordan, as the Lord spake unto Joshua, according to the number of the tribe of the children of Israel, and carried them over with them unto the place where they lodged, and laid them down there. And Joshua set up 12 stones in the midst of Jordan, in the place where the feet of the priests which bear the ark of the covenant stood, and they are there unto this day." Thank you for standing for the reading. I thought, if I could title this tonight, I'd just title it, Let's Stack Some Stones. I thought here we've read that whenever we know that the children of Israel, they had wandered for 40 years, waiting on that promise.
Yes.
That land that was promised to them. And they didn't have to wait that long, but they couldn't get themselves out of the way to receive the promise that God had given them. It took them 40 years to get to where that they could actually do what God had told them to do. But when they finally come to the promised land, Joshua ordered these men, these 12 men, one of each of the tribes of Israel, to go before the ark and to get a stone and set it up for a memorial for God. And as I read that, I don't think they got no little stones. He told them to get up on their shoulder. And most average men, I mean, a rock's heavy, but you can get a pretty good sized stone up on your shoulder to pack to set it up for a memorial. And I thought, as a nation, we've got things that reminds us of the things, the past of our country. As I said yesterday morning, I really enjoy history. And I've, like I said, the worst part about history is most of it's reading, and I don't really like to read. But because of what I like knowing the things that's taking place. And I thought we've got monuments set up. You can go into a national forest, or you go out on a place and you'll see a bronze sign, and you go up and you read that sign, and it tells of things in history that's happened there. That's a memorial set there for us to remember. Out of the harbor of New York, there's the Statue of Liberty standing there. I've never seen it in person, but the people that tell me that's been there, they said there's an awness when you look at that mighty statue, and you know that it's standing there as a memorial of the liberty that we have as a nation. And there's things that we do, but I thought the most important thing is that we set up something that others can see and realize for a memorial, the things that God has done for us. Right. I thought, it wasn't nobody's idea to do this other than God wanted them to do it. Right. God wanted them to remember what He had done. Right. And I thought He knew that in times past that things would happen, and time would pass, and since they had crossed over, and it wouldn't be talked about as much as it used to be, and I thought, that's the way things are. Yes, sir. I thought, I'm sure that my grandfathers done some, I used to listen to, especially my Papa Oliver, tell me of some of the things that he'd done, and I would sit and I would listen to him tell those stories, but I thought, those stories were told to me, and I might have shared a few of them with my son, but then I've got a grandson here, and I thought he's never heard those stories. And I thought, but I've got a few things there at the house. I thought he never knew him. I was 16-year-old when my papa passed away. So my children and my grandchildren, they never knew him. I've got some things there that I can show them that were his, that I can say this is his, or he made this, and this is something to help me remember who he was, and they can look at it and help them remember who he was, but they still don't know him. But I thought, but it's important that we have things to set up to lead others to know who God is, and to let others know what God has brought us through. And I thought God's brought each of us through a lot of things. I thought I can look back and as a child, I can remember times that God done things for my mom and dad. I know times that I was in the automobile when we were coming back from Georgia, and we crossed over into the Tennessee line. I was just 12, 13-year-old boy, if that old, probably about 11 or 12, and we crossed the Tennessee line coming out of Georgia, and the car was on empty. And we drove all the way from Georgia to Kentucky Estill County with an empty tank of gas. You said that's not possible.
I believe it is.
They prayed. I was there. I know it happened. I can remember that. Has God ever let me drive from that? No. He got me from one end of Duncannon out to Bucky's one night. The old car, it died 3 or 4 times. And Sister Kathy prayed, it'd fire up, and we'd go on a little farther. We made it, I don't know, it's about 5 miles out through there. We made it all the way. And I thought, I know God done that. But I thought I didn't drive all the way across 2 states. But I thought, I know God's able. And I thought I could relate that to my children. And I thought, but I knew God done it for them. I know God's done things for me. I know God's put food on my table whenever I didn't have the money to buy. I thought, God has moved. He's done many things for me. And I thought, I'll tell my children of those things as a memorial to remind them of what God has done. And I thought, because I want them to know that God is able to do it for them. I thought, now I've got grandchildren, I want them to know that God is able to do it for them. And I thought that's why it's important that we stack these stones as a memorial to remind us of what God can do. And I thought those that are battling with things, and I know look back and you see where God has brought you from, don't ever forget where God brought you from, but remind others what He's done so that He can do it for them. I thought it's important that we stack stones. I thought God don't want us to dwell on where we've been. I thought, but we don't want to forget where we've been. I thought, and we don't want to bring the past with us. We won't leave that behind. I thought that was the problem with the children of Israel. The reason they had to wander in the wilderness for 40 years is they had been in Egypt for so long. When they left Egypt, they spoiled Egypt. They took a whole lot of Egypt with them. And they had a whole lot of habits and things that they had adapted to in Egypt. And they had to get all of that out of them before they could ever receive the promise that God had given them. So it's important that we leave away the things that we've had problems with. But I thought we need to stack up some stones to remind us of where God has brought us from. And I thought I want to stack a memorial to know that God, the things God has delivered me from. I thought that those stones were stacked up. And verse 6 said that this might be a sign among you. And I thought those, like I said, those 12 stones was to symbolize each one of the tribes of Israel. Now, if you go back and you read about the 12 sons of Israel, not all of them were greatly blessed. Joseph had been sold into slavery by his brothers. And his brothers was the one that done it. But God used Joseph as the deliverer for his brothers and his father. But I thought every one of them was still a part of that tribe of Israel. And I thought, so it was important that there was a symbol set up for every one of them to remind them of the things that God had done. And I thought the reason that He wanted 12 stones instead of one big monument, He could have said, I want you to go out there and I want all 12 of you to go out there and find the biggest rock that you can pack that's out in the middle of that river. And I want you to pick it up and you can pack it up and you can stand it up. I thought that would have been a pretty good sized rock. But instead, He said, I want you each to get a rock so that you can remind your people of what God's done. I don't want one memorial stand up and say, look what God has done. But He wanted a stone so it would be personal to every one of them. And I thought, and it was a sign of unity and in conclusion to bring it all together according to the numbers of the tribe. And I thought we are all individuals, and we all have, like I said, we all have our own stories, and we all have our own struggles. And I thought, and it's important that we set these things up to remind us of what God's done for us. Like I said, I know what God's done for Mom and Dad. And I've heard my papa tell things that God done for them. And I thought, now I've got stories of what God's done for me and my wife and our children. And I thought, now my children's got stories of what God's done for them. And I thought, then I want my grandchildren to have that same story, not to repeat myself, but to let us understand how important it is for us to stack up a memorial so that others can see where God has brought us from. I thought, we have a promise from God, and it's up to us to do our part. And I thought those 12 stones were set up, and they were set up like an altar where the blood was shed to remind them of the redemption of God. God's redeeming grace. And I realized that was back before Christ ever come, before the blood of Jesus was ever shed, and the grace as we know it. But still yet through the sacrifices, God was offering them grace. That's right. And I thought we have grace sufficient tonight. And I thought, and I'm so glad for the grace of God. And I thought, and when those stones for the children, that when their children asked their fathers, saying, what meanest these stones? They could tell them of the things that God had done. Right. And to teach them and lead them farther. And I thought sometimes even us adults need to be reminded of what God's done. I thought, as I said yesterday morning over at the men's meeting, and went back a little bit of some of the things that I went through whenever I was just a young man and just a young father and a young husband, and the enemy come in and attacked me and just about had me ready to give up. But I thought when I looked and I realized all God had blessed me with, right, I realized I can't give up now. And I thought, because that's why it's important to look at the things God has done for us and not forget where He has brought us from. And I thought these stones, like I said, what did the stones tell the children? But they told them about their past. Right. What was their past? They had been enslaved in Egypt. Those stones reminded them there was a time when I was enslaved over there, and I was under a taskmaster, and I had all of these tasks that I had to take care of, and just all the bad things that they endured. And I thought, when we set up those memorials, we realized that when we're lost without God, we're enslaved to a taskmaster. Not that it's things that we're wanting to do, but it's things that we're having to do to cope with life. And I thought we look back and we realize God has brought me beyond this. So we set up those stones so that we look where God has brought us from. Like I said a while ago, they look back and they look at those stones and they realize how lost they were by wandering in that wilderness for 40 long years. And I thought the things, God was with them. God led them. God, they still had all the things. They still had Moses. God provided. I mean, He rained manna from heaven. When they complained about that, He sent quail in and gave them quail to eat. I mean, there was water came from the rock. All the magnificent things God, He was still with them. But they still had to wonder. And they realized what God had done. And then they have that task of coming to that uncrossable river. And then that water rolling apart. And they look and they say, those stones was in the middle of that river when I didn't think I could make it across. And God made a way. I thought, I'm glad tonight that I got some stones that I can stack. That I can look back and I can say, this is where God has brought me from. And I thought He's brought every one of us, when we look back, we realize He brought us all a mighty long way. He's brought us all through a lot of things. And I thought some of us may look and we say, well, He brought, but I thought every one of us can set up stones for a memorial. And I thought, but what did these stones go on and tell the children? It told them that there is a future. And I thought we've got the stones to remind us of where we've been and what we've done. But we can also look at them and say, but I've got a future.
That's right.
I've got a promise. And I thought those stones were set up to remind them that God gave them that promise. And I thought God gave them that unique covenant that was between them and God. And I thought He gave us all the same promise. I thought every one of us tonight, we have a special covenant between us and God. And I thought God has dealt with us, every one on-one. Just like He did all 12 tribes of Israel. And I thought since God led them into the land, He said He would guide them into the future. And I thought God can solve all of our past problems. And He can solve the ones we want to face. And I thought, I'm sure I'll face problems. I thought last weekend I preached. And I believe it was last weekend. And I said, talk about how God had helped us. And I knew that when I left here, I thought, man, I'm going to have it. And I thought, I've got an inspector at work, a government inspector, and she was one of those that you just can't, there's just no compromise. I mean, she just, I just call it not having no common sense. It's all book sense. And there's no common sense there. And she came in and she started first thing Monday morning. I thought, boy, it's going to be a rough one. But then I looked back and I remembered what I said. And I thought, God, you've helped me through a bunch of them. You can help me through this one too. I thought I made it through another week. And I thought, but the thing is, we've got to trust God. We've got to leave it all in God's hands. And I thought, well, we can look back and we can look at that stack of stones that we've stacked up. I said, I remember when God brought me from that. I remember when God brought me through that. And I thought He'd keep bringing us through. Let's keep looking at those stones. And I thought then we can tell our children and our children's children of the things God has done for us. You know, I never remember sitting and talking to my papa and him telling me, I don't know if he ever did or not. I don't know if he ever drank. I don't know nothing about that man's life before he got saved. He never shared that with me. But I can tell you one thing He did share with me. He shared with me those times that he called out on God and God moved for him. That's what he had to share. That's the stones he wanted me to see. He didn't want me to see what the enemy had done, but he wanted me to see what God had done for him. And I thought, I'm glad tonight for our heritage. And I'm glad that I've got stones that I can look to and say, God done it for them. He can do it for me. As they come against the song, I thought, if you've got things in your life that the enemy's telling you can't get over, I thought we've got an altar here tonight, and you can come up here and you can talk to a God that's able to help you through all of those things, get you beyond those things. You can stack up a stone and say, God got me through that.
Yeah.
God helped me through that.
You're preaching good.
You can tell others, God got me to where I am. This is how He done it. And stack up for a memorial every time God moves. As they get us a song tonight, let's come and pray.